All right, let's talk about something we've probably all been through. You're in a job interview, it's going great, you're nailing all the questions, and then bam, they hit you with a surprise personality or logic test. Well, today we are going to decode those exact workplace tests and figure out what's really going on. I mean, seriously, has this ever happened to you? You're cruising through a job application feeling really confident, and then that email lands in your inbox. You know the one. Please complete the following assessment. It sounds so simple, right? But for most of us, what happens after we click that link feels like a complete and total black box. So to figure this all out, we decided to go straight to the source. We actually got our hands on a bunch of official product guides from a company called the Psychometric World. So we're going to look at how they describe these tools, how they sell them to companies, and what they claim these tests can actually do. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to cover what these psychometric tests even are. Then we'll jump into the three main types: the ones that measure how you think, the ones that try to map out who you are, and the ones that look at your special skills. And to wrap it all up, we'll get into the big question: why on earth do companies use them? So what exactly are these things? Well, at their core, they're basically standardized scientific methods. They're designed to measure two things: your mental capabilities and your behavioral style. You can think of it as a really structured way for a company to try and get a little peek inside your head. Okay, now here's a really key idea you have to get your head around: normative results. See, your score on one of these tests isn't just about how many questions you got right. It's all about how you did compared to a huge group of other people, what they call the norm group. So it's not about being right or wrong, it's all about context and comparison. All right, let's dive into the first category. We're talking about the tests designed to measure your raw brain power. You know, the classic cognitive ability and reasoning tests. These are all about assessing how you process information and, of course, how you solve problems. Now, a really central idea in this area is the difference between two kinds of intelligence. You've got fluid intelligence. That's your ability to solve brand new problems, stuff you've never encountered. Then there's crystallized intelligence, which is all about using the knowledge and skills you've already picked up over the years. And a lot of these tests, like the advanced reasoning test, are trying to measure both. So what this really shows is that it's not just about being smart in one single way. It's about how you're smart. These tests, like one called the CCT Pro for professionals, they try to break it all down. Are you a logical thinker, more of a creative type? Or maybe you're a systems thinker, the kind of person who sees how all the different pieces connect. And when companies are doing big, large-scale hiring, they often bundle these skills together. So, for example, something called the aptitude test battery will focus on three main things: how you work with words, how you work with numbers, and how you work with abstract patterns. It's kind of like a foundational checkup of your mental horsepower. Okay, so we've talked about how you think, but what about who you are? And that, my friends, brings us into the fascinating world of personality assessments. So a lot of the personality tests you'll see today are based on what's known as the Big Five model. It's this idea that our personalities can be pretty much mapped out across 5 big traits. Now, the model we're looking at here, called HEXACO, actually adds a 6th one: honesty, humility. And the whole point isn't to say some traits are good and others are bad, but just to understand that people have different working styles. Okay, but here's a thought. What happens if words themselves get in the way? You know, maybe because of language barriers or just different levels of education. How are you supposed to measure someone's personality in that situation? Well, the answer is pretty simple, actually. You get rid of the words. Tests like the nonverbal personality inventory do exactly that. They use images instead of text. And this makes the whole thing way more universal. It means you can use it across different cultures or with people who just aren't as comfortable with a ton of formal written questions. So this brings us to a really crucial distinction. When it comes to personality, there are basically 2 main ways to look at it. You have trait theory, think of the Big Five, which puts you on a scale for different things. But then you have type theory, which is used in tests like the MBTI Pro. That approach sorts you into a specific box, like one of 16 distinct personality profiles. So it's really the difference between measuring how much of something you are versus which one you are. All right, let's move on to our third and final category of tests. And these get really specific. We're not talking about general intelligence or broad personality anymore. Nope, these are all about the unique, specialized skills you need for a very particular job. Let's take sales, for instance. A test like the Sales Competency Survey won't just ask a vague question like, "Are you a people person?"
No way. It gets way more granular. It actually assesses how skilled you are at every single stage of the sales cycle, all the way from finding new customers to closing the deal and getting referrals. It's incredibly focused.
And then, of course, there's the huge topic of emotional intelligence. A test like the EQIP breaks this down into 4 key areas. It's about understanding and managing yourself, sure, but it's also about understanding others and managing those relationships. I mean, you can see why those are absolutely critical skills for any leader or team member, right? And honestly, the level of specialization just gets wild. You can find tests that claim they can measure your entrepreneurial mindset, or even tools designed to diagnose the relationship dynamics within an entire team. It really seems like if there's a behavior you can think of in the workplace, someone has probably designed a test to measure it. So you see this huge arsenal of all these specialized tools. And it brings us to the million-dollar question. What is the point of all this? What's the end goal? Why are companies pouring so much time and money into this stuff? Well, looking through all these brochures, one thing becomes crystal clear. It is not just about hiring. These tests are used all the time, through the whole life of an employee at a company. From picking who to hire, to spotting future leaders, to figuring out how to build better teams, what it all boils down to is an attempt to make smarter, more data-driven decisions about people. Okay, but how does a company know if one of these tests is actually any good? Well, they look for 3 main things. First is reliability. Is the test consistent? Will you get a similar score if you take it again? Second is validity. Does it actually measure what it claims to measure? And more importantly, does it actually predict who's going to be good at the job? And third is the norm group size. Just how many people are they comparing your score against? And when we talk about the size of those groups, it can be absolutely massive. Just take the advanced reasoning test we mentioned earlier. Its norm group is something like 50,000 people. Just let that sink in for a second. Your score isn't just floating out there. It's being compared to a dataset the size of a small city. That's the scale we're talking about. And all of this brings us right back to where we started. At the end of the day, these tests are trying to create a neat data-driven snapshot of our minds, our personalities, our potential. But it leaves us with this one fundamental question. Can a 20-minute test, no matter how scientific it is, really capture the full, messy, complex picture of who you are and everything you're capable of? Now that is something to think about.